hand primers. What I've come up with here is put a dowel in and hang these by one of the holes that's in here. And the hand pump itself, just drill a hole that's the same diameter or just a hair larger than this, and we'll just stand it up so you can just reach and grab it. I'm also going to build a little shelf for my clock. Probably don't need it, but I kind of like to keep my workbench clear. First, we need to take some measurements and figure out the dimensions of the items and how big we need to cut the blanks for the fixtures. Okay, I've measured my tools and I've drawn a little diagram of how I'm going to lay this thing out. This is for the shell plate holder. It's going to hold 10 plates with 3/16 inch dowels, 1 inch on center. It's going to be overall 5 inches long, 2 3/4 inches. This is the primer tube holder. These are for my 2 primer tube holes, are 5/16 inch diameter. This is a square for the part that mounts to the press that holds the primer tube. Just in case I want to remove it at some point, I have a place to put it. And this is for the bolt and the washer. This is for my scales. This is going to be a horizontal item. The scale will lay on like a shelf. This is for the weight, calibration weight. This is for the little pan that goes on the scale. And this is the hand primer. The 2 trays are going to hang from these dowels on each side. The handle part will stick up between the 2. This is a view looking down on it. This is the handle part. These 2 holes here are for the pins that actually push the primer into the case. So I have a place to put those. This one here is for the clock. It's basically going to be a shelf, 9.5 inches long by 4 inches deep. Each one of these, depending on if it's a shelf type or if it's a vertical that kind of hangs down, this is the 1/2 inch dado that's actually going to slip over the slat board, this portion. And since we're working with softwood pine in this instance, I've allowed 1 inch of thick material behind the dado just to give it some strength. These fibers are soft and I didn't want the piece behind this dado to split off. I wanted to show you a couple of quick tips. Might help you out. When you're cutting your dowels, I have this little block here that keeps the dowel from slipping all the way through. I use this gash, the edge of this gash, as my go-to mark, and it's going to cut on this middle one here. So to make them all the same length, I just line the edge up with that gash, and then this is where it's going to cut. And if you have a problem with them flying all over the place, I took a little block. Tip 2 has to do with finishing. I took a piece of scrap from our slats. I hung the boards that I'm going to finish. I've already sanded them, wiped them down with a damp cloth to remove the dust. That will let me finish the items fairly easily. As an alternative, I could have laid them on my tabletop and just put something underneath them. That's what I usually do. But I wanted to make sure I got a good coat on the end grain. It'd be easier to do it this way. I'll give you a little close-up while I got this mounted to my bench top. How this system actually works. This is one of the vertical pieces that's going to hold my shell plates. You see the notch here? This is a separate board. I went ahead and put a rabbet on it, and then I put some biscuits in it and glued it to the fixture to make the fixture. But this thing just slips over like this and hangs. The other ones, the ones that are horizontal, work the same way, except I just cut a dado instead of having to put another piece on it. And it just slips over the same way. Coats of polyurethane on my fixtures. Just wanted to go over briefly what each one of them was for, and maybe a few tips that may help you out. This was for my primer tube dispenser that attaches to the press. These items. These two holes are for the two tubes, large and small primer tube. This is for the bracket that attaches to the press. This is for the bolt and washer. And this little hole here is for the Allen wrench that came with it, just for easy accessibility, and I won't have to hunt for tools. If you don't know how I made this here, I have a dedicated mortiser, but it's easy enough done with a good chisel. I didn't take my time with it, so it is a little crooked, but again, this is a utility item, and I think it'll serve its purpose. This was for shell plate. This is one that I had to attach the extra block to. These 3/16 inch dowels, 1 inch on center, 1/2 inch from the edge. Notice they're all pretty close to the same height. Took the depth of my hole and the depth I wanted to protrude from the face, and I subtracted about 1/8 of an inch off of that and then cut my dowels. Then as I was putting the dowels in, I used a sliding carpenter scale and gauged them as I put them in, so they're all the same height. This here was for my scales. I decided not to do the recess. It's easy enough done with a router, but didn't really see any sense going through that, because I think it'll sit here just fine. This is for the weight, calibration weight. This is for the little pan, the powder pan. This is pretty straightforward. It's just my shelf for my clock radio. This here is for my hand primer. This one and this one are for the primer trays, RCBS and the Hornady tray. This here is for the spring. We've got 2 small holes. Those are for the press part itself, the large and the small. They are 2 different sizes. And the large hole is obviously for the handle. And I've cut a little relief in here just so it's easier to get in and out. It's pretty tight fit. You want these items to fit snug, but you don't want to have to wrestle getting them out either. Here's a look at what it looks like on the wall. Obviously that's my hand primer and tools, my scales, clock. Shelves are pretty handy. You can move them around. So you have cleaning supplies. You know, you can set your different cleaning supplies, you know, on a shelf, and group it. And you can move the different shelves together and have them in a particular order. There's my shell plate holder, and I thought about labeling some of these, but I believe once I get used to where they are, I'll probably, you know, put them smallest to largest or something like that. And once I get used to where each one of them is, then it'll just be automatic. Primer tube holder. See the tool back there. I'll give you an overall look one more time. That's it. Got a lot of tools to go up, and a lot of space that I can put them in now. and get them off my workbench. These are just a few of the items I plan on making fixtures for next. I may or may not post a video on that, but just follows the same procedure I did with the first ones. If you have any questions, just leave comments. I'll do my best to answer your questions. As always, I hope this helps, and thanks for watching.